Hello, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here to bring you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the evening of December 16, 2023 in the United States, the morning of December 17, 2023 in the Middle East. Before I get started, I'm going to note that I will be traveling for the next 3 days. I will try to upload more concise summaries whenever possible, however, I may not be able to do that every day. I will still continue to update major news developments on my Twitter account. It is at Alon Burstein, that's ALON Burstein. If you'd like to follow, I will be back on December 21st. Starting with the hostage situation, the IDF is now confirming that one more hostage that is held by Hamas is considered dead. Bar Heyman, and her body is being held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The number of hostages in the Gaza Strip remain 129. In other news, there's more reports coming in about the incident in Sajaiya that occurred yesterday, in which 3 Israeli hostages who either had managed to escape or were abandoned by their captors were trying to get to the IDF. However, they were shot dead by the IDF. According to the IDF investigation, 2 days before the incident, the military noticed several hundred meters away that on a building a cloth had been hung, and there was graffiti that said in Hebrew, 3 hostages SOS. However, the IDF suspected this was a trap, and they have not investigated the building yet. According to the assessment, the 3 either escaped or were abandoned by their captors as the IDF moved closer and closer to where they were being held in the Sajaiya neighborhood. Regarding the incident itself, the 3 came out, they were shirtless and waving a white cloth. An IDF lookout opened fire on them, and 2 were killed instantly by this first barrage of fire. One of them fled into a building, which was then stormed by the IDF platoon. According to reports, they heard someone yelling help in Hebrew, however suspected it was a trap. They called the person to come out of the building, and he was then shot dead at point-blank range. The military says that the soldiers did not follow procedures, and the soldiers were not supposed to fire upon someone who was surrendering, and have clarified the regulations to soldiers in the Gaza Strip. This also comes amidst a different incident that occurred last week, in which after a Palestinian attack in Jerusalem, and the attackers were shot by an Israeli, that Israeli, who then had his hands up and was unarmed, was also shot dead by soldiers on the scene who thought that he was the Palestinian attacker. So this is another incident in which Israelis were shot dead by soldiers thinking that they were part of a Palestinian attack. The IDF also noted that it is only due to the ground operation that the hostages either managed to escape or were abandoned by their captors, and thus the ground operation is still necessary in order to secure the release of hostages. Related to a possible hostage deal, the Wall Street Journal reported today that the head of the Mossad, Dedi Barnea, met in the last 24 hours with Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani in Oslo in Europe in order to reignite negotiations. Israel is still insisting, according to the reports, on the release of women and children first, and according to the reports, the Qatari Prime Minister urged Barnea that Israel should suggest a deal, while Barnea was instructed by the War Cabinet to answer that Qatar needs to initiate it, and that Israel is willing to listen. I will note also that Dedi Barnea tried to go meet with the Qatari Prime Minister several days ago and was rejected by the War Cabinet. According to different reports, the Israeli government is considering initiating its own hostage exchange deal. However, the War Cabinet is split on this. According to different leaks from the cabinet, Minister Gantz agrees that Israel should be the one to initiate a proposal, while Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant disagree, and they say that Israel should not appear too gung-ho to go to a deal, and instead needs to wait for Hamas to come and ask for a deal, likely in response to military pressure. Responding to this, Hamas put out an official statement in which it stated, "We are prepared to negotiate the release of hostages only if the aggression towards our people is fully stopped," i.e. Hamas is saying only if a complete ceasefire, not a truce, is on the table, then Hamas is going to negotiate the release of hostages. Moving on to the ongoing fighting, rockets and mortars today were fired from the Gaza Strip, primarily towards the southern parts of Israel. Barrages targeted the areas surrounding Gaza, Nirim, Nir Am, as well as Miflasim, Sha'ar Negev, and there were also rockets sent towards Sderot. Moving on to the fighting within the Gaza Strip, in Jabalia refugee camp, the IDF completed taking over the Kamal Adwan hospital. This is a hospital the IDF had been besieging for the last several days, and there were photos of Palestinians who were being taken out of there and arrested as the IDF moved in. 90 Palestinians are reported arrested in total from the hospital. Some of them were attackers who participated on October 7th, and the IDF reported that substantial weaponry was uncovered in the hospital compound, including guns, RPGs, explosives, different technological equipment, and intelligence materials that were also used on October 7th. The IDF also reported that substantial weaponry was found specifically in the nurseries inside incubators as well. The Palestinian health minister in the Gaza Strip stated that the IDF destroyed the southern parts of the hospital, and that 12 children remain in the hospital in the children's ward without access to food or water. The Palestinian health minister also stated that the IDF stopped medical staff from evacuating the children from the hospital. Other news in the north of the Gaza Strip, in the Rimal area in Gaza City, there were substantial battles reported between the IDF and different Hamas units who were held up in 2 different schools. According to reports, the battles lasted several hours. The IDF eventually took over the schools, and both of them were badly damaged. Some reports say were completely destroyed. In Sajaiya, the IDF continued its operation throughout the neighborhood, and a strategic tunnel entrance was destroyed after Hamas attempted an ambush from it. Moving down south towards the Han Yunis area, there was a series of raids the IDF carried out against different apartment complexes, uncovering substantial weaponry as well as different tunnel entrances in the heart of the city. Other news in the Gaza Strip: the telecommunications throughout the Gaza Strip have crashed in the last 2 days. The initial reports were that it was difficult for people to connect to the internet and actually use phone access, and in the last 24 hours, a report of a complete crash. This is the 5th time this has happened since the war began. The IDF has never taken responsibility for this. However, in the first times, this was done prior to an IDF major offensive, so prior to the IDF's first invasion to the Gaza Strip, then prior to initiating the invasion down south. Now telecommunications have again crashed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. According to different reports, there were substantial bombardments throughout the Gaza Strip. These targeted primarily the Han Yunis area, Sajaiya, as well as Darj Tufah in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In other news, Al Arabi Al Jadid reported that for the first time in the war, Egyptian helicopters were seen in the air near the Rafah crossing. This may be related to Egypt's growing concern that Palestinians will eventually be forced to burst through the Rafah crossing in order to take refuge in Sinai, and Egypt has been amplifying different security measures along the border. Unclear if that is what it refers to. This is the first time the helicopters were seen on the Egyptian side since the war began. The Palestinian Health Ministry, again, for the second day in a row, did not publish its daily report. This is likely associated with the breakdown in telecommunications. The last times that there was a blackout in the Gaza Strip, Palestinian Health Ministry did not report on the fatalities for several days. The last report from 2 days ago remains that 18,787 Palestinians have been killed since the war began in the Gaza Strip, and 50,897 have been injured. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, again, because of the breakdown of telecommunications and lack of access to internet in the Gaza Strip, it is very difficult to know what is the humanitarian situation, what has been going on in the last 24 hours. Reports from international organizations are that the World Health Organization announced that it managed to transfer over medical equipment to the Al-Shifa hospital, and that the hospital still has 500 people and is functioning minimally, however, was completely out of supplies. According to the report, this was a complex operation that was coordinated with the IDF and the United Nations. A total of 120 trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies entered the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing, as well as 4 fuel tankers. There is no report about the activation of the Kerem Shalom crossing. Yesterday it was reported that Israel had agreed to U.S. pressure and to open the Kerem Shalom crossing for the entrance of trucks as well. That did not happen in the last 24 hours. Unclear when that in fact will happen. Moving on to the West Bank, there was substantial IDF activity reported in the Deir Amr area near Ramallah. According to the reports, the IDF had entered the village in order to try to arrest different Palestinians that were involved in Molotov cocktail throwing along the highway. Different confrontations erupted with stone throwing and Molotov cocktails. A 16-year-old Palestinian is reported killed in these confrontations, and 2 more young Palestinians are badly injured. Other IDF activities reported in the Beit Omar area near Hebron and in Tulkarem. There's no information given about how many people were arrested in these different operations. However, 2 more Palestinians are reported killed, one in Beit Omar and one in Tulkarem, bringing the total number of Palestinians that were killed in the West Bank in the last 24 hours to 3. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there were substantial barrages of rockets and missiles sent from Lebanon towards both the Upper Galilee and the Western Galilee in Israel. Rockets targeted the area of Kiryat Shmone, Margaliot, Tel Hai, Kfar Giladi, Zar'it, Alon, and Goren, as well as Mevot Hermon. There were also 2 drone attacks reported, with one being intercepted and one carrying out an explosive attack as it crashed into Margaliot. This killed 1 IDF soldier and injured 2 more. Al-Manar also reported that Hezbollah attacked 2 IDF outposts along the border and that the IDF was retaliating with artillery in response. The IDF did not report these incidents. Regarding IDF retaliation, there was substantial Air Force and artillery retaliations throughout the day, including targeting military compounds, lookout posts, and other Hezbollah infrastructure. There were also attacks against a launching site where there were 2 suspects reported, and Al-Manar stated that most of the retaliations were in the Jabal Balat areas in the southern parts of Lebanon. The IDF also intercepted a surface-to-air missile that was sent from Lebanon, trying to target an IDF drone. The missile, according to reports, missed and was making its way towards Tiberias, and it was eventually intercepted by the IDF. Moving on to some of the regional developments, it was reported today that the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, is going to officially declare the launching of Operation Prosperity next week, and this is going to be that international maritime force that has already started operating to secure the Red Sea against the Houthi threat. According to reports, either on Monday or Tuesday, the operation is going to be officially launched. Other news, a French shipping company also announced today that it is going to stop shipping through the Red Sea. This follows reports of 2 different companies, including the second largest one in the world, that announced yesterday that they are going to stop their shipments through the Red Sea as a result of Houthi attacks. According to different reports, the French shipping company CMA CGM is partly owned by an Israeli and was the target of attacks of the Houthis already last month. Other news, the U.S. Central Command today stated that a destroyer, the USS Carney, intercepted 14 drones that the Houthis had launched from Yemen, did not say where they were going. Hours later, the IDF spokesperson stated that the drones were en route to Israel, and this is not the first time that the drones that were sent by Yemen were intercepted by U.S. destroyers in the area. The Guardian reported that a British ship in the area also intercepted a drone attack that was heading towards a ship in the Red Sea. Moving on to some of the political and general trends that occurred in the last 24 hours, the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is currently on his way to the Middle East. He is going to visit Israel and then travel to Bahrain and Qatar. According to reports, in Israel, he's going to discuss the future plans of the war, reigniting the hostage exchange deals, truces, humanitarian situation, and mostly what the U.S. is pressuring Israel on, what is Israel's plan for the day after the war. This comes after the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan already visited Israel several days ago and also pressured Israel to come up with a plan and not just say what is not going to happen. And now the Secretary of Defense is also arriving and likely going to apply even more pressure. Other political news, Hamas leader in Lebanon, Osama Hamdan, stated today, and I'm quoting, Netanyahu's statements substantiate that he is busy with his political future. Netanyahu is waiting for the right moment to attack the Palestinian Authority. Netanyahu will not win in Gaza, no matter how much he tries to prolong a campaign. While this may seem like rhetoric and insignificant, it is actually quite important to note that Hamas is now, in the last couple of days, trying to suggest that the Palestinians need to present a united front and trying to drag the Palestinian Authority into the war. Several different statements have been made by Hamas leadership, encouraging the Palestinian Authority to not think that Israel will not end up also attacking them in the West Bank. And this is part of this growing pressure, seemingly after Hamas has given up on the idea that Hezbollah is going to join the war on trying to ignite the West Bank instead in order to have another front that Israel has to deal with that will distract them from the Gaza Strip. Other political news, there were major protests that occurred in Israel today after their incident in Sajaiya yesterday, demanding that the government secure the release of hostages above other goals. This relates to the ongoing political turmoil in Israel and in the war cabinet, as Minister Gantz and Minister Eisenkot both went today to meet with the families of different hostages and stated that they are going to make sure that returning hostages is a top priority in the war, while again there's this disagreement where Netanyahu and Minister Gallant, Minister of Defense, have stated that while returning the hostages is a top priority, Israel is not going to be the one to initiate a hostage exchange deal, and they're waiting for Qatar to bring one from Hamas. Moving on to speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, Prime Minister Netanyahu today related to the future of the Gaza Strip quite extensively in a press conference. He stated, and I'm quoting, "I am saying it over and over and many people already understand. I will not allow the replacement of Hamastan with Fatahstan, i.e. the replacement of Hamas dominating the Gaza Strip with Fatah that dominates the PLO in the Gaza Strip. I will not replace Khan Yunis with Jenin. I will not return to Oslo," referring to the Oslo Accords. The argument between Fatah and Hamas is not about whether to destroy Israel, it is about how. Recent polls show that 82% of Palestinians justify the October 7th massacre, and they will control the Gaza Strip the day after. Have we learned nothing? It is important to have honesty between friends relating to the friction between Israel and the United States. We will not repeat the terrible mistakes of Oslo and bring more radical elements to the heart of our country. Responding to questions, Netanyahu also added, "We have to tell the truth and not build up illusions, so I repeatedly say, after destroying Hamas, Gaza will be under Israeli control and there will be no entity that will threaten us. There will be demilitarization, the IDF will be in charge of security in the Gaza Strip, and there will be a civil administration there that will not educate its children to destroy Israel. I have held this position for a long time now." So what we're seeing is that while the United States is actually amplifying its pressure on Israel to come to some sort of conclusion in the intensity of the fighting within the next 3 weeks and to develop its vision for the day after, that, according to the United States, needs to involve Palestinian Authority and a Palestinian entity that will take over the Gaza Strip, Netanyahu is, at least in rhetoric, amplifying Israel's position and saying that the IDF is going to be the one in control of the Gaza Strip and no other entity will do so. That is my report for the last 24 hours. As I stated at the beginning, I will be traveling for the next 3 days. I will not necessarily be able to upload a summary every day. I will try to upload more concise summaries. However, you can follow more news developments on my Twitter account as well. I will be back, for sure, on Thursday.